So it's finally happened. In the very first time in the history of the MacBook Air lineup, Apple has released a 15-inch screen that people have been asking for years. The larger screen offers much more display space for productivity and entertainment. Did Apple hit the perfect sweet spot with this MacBook, or should you consider other options? Hi guys, my name is Manny, and today we'll be looking at the midnight version of the M2 Air 15-inch. We'll be going over the specs, the capabilities, and looking at some options and configurations that's best suited for you. So we're going to begin with the contents of the packaging that you get with the MacBook Air. Of course, you get the laptop itself. You also get a braided MagSafe to USB 4 cable, which is excellent. Typically, Apple releases a plastic cable, which isn't quite durable over the years, but I'm hoping with this braided feature, it'll be a lot better. And you also get a 35-watt standard charging block with two USB-C inputs. You do have the option of upgrading to the 70-watt. I'll talk about more of that later. I actually did an entire unboxing video you can find right here to go over the contents more in depth. Next, I want to talk about the laptop, the exterior, and all the ports and features it has. So immediately what you'll realize is that this MacBook Air M2 is exactly the same design as a 13-inch counterpart. You get the standard MagSafe connector here to charge your laptop, and you also get two USB 4.0 ports on the side. This is a big upgrade from the M1 where you only had the two USB ports to both charge and use as data. This way, you don't have to worry about blocking out one of the USB-C ports, which is excellent. You don't have to buy an extended dock for that. On the side, you have a headphone jack. So the headphone jack is staying, which I'm extremely happy for. Apple, thank you very much. And of course, all laptops still allow you to connect your headphones via Bluetooth. The main thing is that the laptop is obviously noticeably bigger and the entire Air is uniform across. So no more wedge shape. This is now more along the lines of the MacBook Pro that was released a few years ago. And this is actually just slightly thicker than the 13-inch M2 Air, just by 0.1 of an inch, but it's not noticeable if you were to put them side to side. So just like the 13-inch M2, the bezel comes equipped with this notch at the top. So there's still no Face ID, but you do get a modified Touch ID integrated into the laptop for additional security. Now, I'm not sure if Apple can, over updated software, allow you to integrate Face ID with this camera. I'm assuming probably not, but one can be hopeful, and that would be such a convenient way of accessing your laptop. Now, one of the great things about the larger laptop and larger screen is that the keyboard itself actually remains the same. So the keyboard size is identical to the 13-inch counterpart. You just have more space on the side. As well, surprisingly, the trackpad has gotten a lot bigger. So if you do like using the Apple trackpad and you find yourself maybe sometimes complaining that it was too small on the smaller laptops, you have so much more real estate now. One of the great things is you also get more space to rest your hands when typing, and you never have to worry about your wrists cutting into the edge of the bezel or the chassis of the laptop, making it uncomfortable. It's completely fine, and I've been able to use this laptop for extended periods of times, up to 3 hours, without having any issues with typing. Now, as someone who has upgraded from the M1 MacBook Air and trying to go over to the M2, I do love that the camera is now a full 1080p camera, so thank you, Apple. The old one was 720p, and honestly, 720p in 2020s is a bit outdated, so that is a big upgrade, and it's noticeably more clear and crisp. And guys, if you're enjoying this video so far and you find it entertaining and helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel. I post weekly videos on tech and productivity, and I keep in touch with all the new Apple products as they're released. So hit that notification bell so you're up to date with all the new videos I post. Now, another major upgrade on the 15-inch MacBook Air is the addition of two more speakers. So now this comes equipped with 6 speakers as opposed to 4 speakers on the 13-inch counterparts. There are no speaker grills, but somehow Apple has integrated these speakers in the perfect areas within the laptop, and the sound is absolutely amazing. It also comes with force canceling woofers. So that means when you're working on your laptop and you're blaring music quite loud, you won't feel any vibration on the keyboard or in the chassis, which is excellent. The last thing you want is to have your laptop shaking and distracting you from your work. And it is actually quite phenomenal how they've been able to integrate dampeners inside the chassis to make sure that there's no vibration at all. So of course, the biggest selling point about this MacBook Air is the increased size and display, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about it. So for those of you guys aren't aware, the way that screen sizes are measured is from end to end diagonally, and that distance is the screen size. Now, the older MacBook was 13.3 inches. This one is 15.3 inches. Now, on paper, it may only seem like there's a 2-inch difference, but when you do the actual area analysis, you actually get 25% more display coverage than the other laptop. 25% is actually a considerable amount. When doing multi-windows on a single screen, you'll notice that on the 15-inch, it's not as squished and compact as it is on a 13-inch. So for people who are multitasking, whether it be productivity, or for professionals like video editors, photo editors, or coders, that extra space is very convenient, especially when you don't have access to an external monitor. Now, the resolution on this MacBook Air 15-inch is 2880 by 1864. You have a higher pixel count than the 13-inch, obviously, but the pixels per square inch are identical. So no matter what area of the screen you look at, clarity is pretty much identical. You get 500 nits of brightness. 500 nits is brighter than the 400 nits you got on the M1 lineup, so that means working in bright conditions is absolutely not a problem. The only downside is it does not come with ProMotion. So no high refresh rate from Apple that they have on the MacBook Pro models. You're still restricted to 60 Hertz. So keep that in mind. If you are working with high frame rate videos, you're going to be restricted to that 60 Hertz. So if you want to go and upgrade your panel, you're probably looking at the Pro lineup. So moving on to the specs, my unit here is with 8 GB of unified memory and 256 GB of storage. It comes in the midnight color, so it's a very dark purple or a navy blue depending on how you look at it and how the light hits. And it cost $1,300 USD or approximately 1749 Canadian. It comes equipped with the M2 processor, the same M2 processor that's in the 13-inch as well as the Mac Mini. So you get an 8-core CPU and it comes with a 10-core GPU. Now, just like other MacBook Airs, including this one, this is all fanless. So there's no fans inside to cool the laptop. Apple relies on passive cooling technology, and Apple's cooling is actually quite phenomenal. I've put this machine under load and it hasn't overheated or been uncomfortable to touch on your lap or on your hands. Now, I was thinking with the 15-inch and the much larger chassis, maybe Apple could have integrated a fan, but when you're integrating a fan, you're adding more components and you're probably adding more thickness to the actual chassis. So I like that Apple decided to continue with the fanless technology. It's great. I have no issues. And of course, if you are worried about keeping your laptop cool, you can always get an external cooling pad, which pretty much any laptop enthusiast and professional will recommend anyway. Now let's go into the performance of the laptop. Now, in terms of benchmarking, I did benchmark my M2 Mini that has the exact same processor. You can actually find that video right here. There are actually a lot of YouTubers that go into in-depth with programs across the board, from video editing to coding to compiling, to get you a better idea of what the benchmark results are. Long story short, the M2 is a very, very capable CPU. Now, with that being said, I do want to touch on the SSD on the 15-inch MacBook Air. So I have the 256 gigabytes and I did a speed test and I got 1400 megabytes of read and around 1450 to 1500 megabytes of write. Now, this is an issue because my M1 MacBook Air from 2020 with the 512 gigabyte SSD is getting read and write speeds in the high 2000s. And I think Apple did the exact same thing that they did with the 13-inch M2, where they used an inferior SSD as their base model, 256 gigabytes, as opposed to using a quality NVMe drive. Unfortunately, you're running into the same issues. You're not going to get the speeds and write speeds that you're supposed to be getting in 2023. The other issue I have with Apple is not only is the storage absolutely horrible at 256, whether you're a professional or a regular consumer, you're going to get that space filled up relatively quickly. It's the upgrade price that Apple is charging you to upgrade to 512. You have to pay an extra 200 USD just to get an extra 256 gigabytes, which is insane. So a lot of people will say, well, it's inflation. You know, the price of things is going up and up. But in terms of technology and in terms of gigabyte storage, the price per gigabyte over the years has actually gone down. So it's unfortunate that Apple is still nitpicking and, you know, nickel and diming their consumers just to get an average storage space on their laptops. 512 gigabytes should be the absolute minimum storage. It's unfortunate that Apple continues to do this even on such a great and capable machine like this. So when you're purchasing this laptop, understand that if you're going to go with the base model, unless you have cloud services and you're storing your stuff online, you will fill up the space on this laptop very, very quickly. Now, of course, if you are set on purchasing the base model and that's what your budget allows for, you do have other options in terms of storage. You can go with external SSDs. You can get up to 1 terabyte with very high speeds for around $100, sometimes even less. These new SSDs are actually quite small and compact. Unfortunately, it's just one more thing you have to carry around with you that isn't integrated into the laptop. Okay, on to another very sensitive topic in the community, that is 8 gigabytes versus 16 gigabytes. I'm gonna give you my 2 cents here. If you're just a regular user, you like to do video editing and you're the occasional coder, stick to 8 gigabytes. You're saving yourself money and it's more than enough. Remember, macOS memory management is not the same as Windows OS. So comparing 8 gigabytes to 8 gigabytes is actually not a fair comparison. Number 2, if you are a professional, so you require this laptop to make you money and use it for work, obviously it makes sense to upgrade it to the memory that not only suits you now, but also that will suit you in a couple of years, because obviously you want to keep a laptop for at least a couple of years as it is an expensive device. There are YouTubers that have made endless videos on this topic. Even I've talked about it. I'll link some of those videos in the description below so you guys get a better idea. But in terms of this specific setup, this has done me absolutely perfectly fine with no issues whatsoever. Now, just for fun, I do want to compare this MacBook to my M1 Air, and I'm talking about just size particular. You'll notice that the actual shape of the MacBook Air is now not the traditional wedge shape. So the one advantage that the M1 had is that the angle at which you rested your wrists on the MacBook was at an angle, so it was a little bit more comfortable than this one, but very slightly. Also, this is thicker than the M1 Air and a lot bigger. So if you are traveling a lot, you're either a student or you're packing this laptop in a bag and flying around, not only is it heavier, but it also takes up more space. So also consider that when purchasing this MacBook as well. The other small features is that the M1 had a speaker grill. This laptop doesn't have a speaker grill, and more conveniently though, on the back of the MacBook Air M1, there are a lot more screws to disassemble the laptop, whereas with the M2, there are only 4. So there are subtle and small differences, and then there's obviously the major ones in terms of shape, but overall, it really comes down to preference. I like both shapes. I think the new M2 has a much more modern look. It's going away from the wedge shape that Apple has had for over a decade, but then there obviously are traditionalists that are going to miss that shape, and that shape used to actually differentiate between a Air and a Pro. Now they're almost pretty much identical. So like I said, it's all preference. It's just a fun little activity I decided to do and throw in this video just for comparison's sake. Other noticeable differences between the M2 and the M1 is that the bezels on the M2 are much smaller than the M1 Air. And a very small thing that I noticed is on the M1 Air, there's actually the MacBook Air logo at the bottom of the bezel. The new one doesn't have that. So if you are looking at this and you're looking at just small differences, there are probably a lot more, but that's the first ones that jumped out at me. Okay, I do want to bring up one thing, and it's sort of the elephant in the room. You've looked at the B-roll, you've seen the shots of me holding the MacBook and displaying it, and the biggest issue is the fingerprints. This color in Midnight is a fingerprint magnet. So if that's something that irks you and you do not like it, I recommend that you stick to different colors. Starlight is a very popular color. You also get it in space gray as well as the classic Mac silver. My old MacBook Air is actually in regular silver, and no matter how hard you grip it, there are no fingerprints. This unfortunately is a fingerprint magnet, and the way that the light reflects, you're going to be able to see it. Same thing on the back. When you're walking around with this, unless you get a case or if you get skins for this laptop, it's going to be just fingerprints galore. And at that point, if you're getting skins, it sort of reduces and defeats the purpose of getting this color specifically. So just be aware of that. A lot of YouTubers have brought this up in the past. Fingerprint magnet, I don't like it. And if you don't like it, get a different color. Another main question, should you purchase this laptop? Now, if you want a laptop with a larger screen and you don't want to be paying that Pro model pricing, then the MacBook Air M2 15-inch is the perfect laptop for you. Modern processor that will handle pretty much all the tasks you throw at it. However, if you're on a budget and you want to save some money, like you're a student and you're looking forward to the upcoming school year, the MacBook Air M1 is still a viable option for you guys. Now, I personally own the MacBook Air M1. I actually had it upgraded to 16 gigabytes of RAM and even the storage, and I purchased it over 2.5 years ago. The difference in performance with the M2 and the M1 is actually very, very small. So for me, I'm actually going to be returning this unit. I'm going to be sticking with my M1 because $1,800 for an incremental upgrade just doesn't make sense. Now, if you've owned a laptop that's over 5 years old, like for example, you're still with the Intel lineup of MacBooks, or you just have in general an older laptop, then upgrading to the newest edition with the most recent processor makes the most sense. Now, if you guys found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel. My whole goal in this YouTube space is to not only broadcast and outline all the new products that are coming out, but to really be honest and let you know if it's worth purchasing and saving you guys money. With all that being said, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the content, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.